All right, stress. Let's talk about it. There's a lot to cover in this topic. I can't cover everything. There's going to be a lot of information missing, but I'm going to do what I can. Stress. Let's start with the data. Okay, first of all, I want to clarify. When I talk about stress in this video, it's going to be the chronic toxic stress that I'm going to be referring to, right? Not really just the small acute situations where you have just minor stress. It's going to be the toxic chronic stress. All right, let's get into it. Brain scans of 2-3-year-old babies here, and we can see one baby had encountered chronic toxic stress. Brain developed to a size that's 10% smaller than that of an average baby, right? Stress changes the actual physiology of the brain. Now, this is a baby. We're going to talk about what happens to adults as well. So, when we talk about stress, we got to talk about the amygdala, this little almond-shaped piece in each hemisphere. And how do we know the amygdala is responsible? Well, they have studies. This is one study where they put a mouse in the room with a little pebblet of food, and a robot is designed to go after it, approach the mouse whenever it goes after the food. And you can see the fight or flight system kicks in, the mouse runs away, everything's good. Now, they wanted to test this hypothesis that it is the amygdala, so they created a lesion in the amygdala. They damaged the amygdala and then put the mouse in the same situation and then tested, and as you can see, no fight or flight response. There's no fear, and in a natural situation, if that was a predator, that mouse probably would not survive. So, it's good, right? In some situation, this is good. This is what we need to survive in some situations. Now, in nature, this is good, but in real life, in our life, it happens in times that we don't want it, right? And this is where our quality of life changes. Actually, your whole life could change. And it's terrible. So, let's talk about this. First of all, it's not just an actual threat, it's a perceived threat that can trigger this response. It's a perceived threat that can trigger stress. And where I've seen this most often is just on the internet, man. People go on the internet, they're arguing with other people, they're watching violent content, they're getting triggered by either comments, by posts, or by content, right? And in real life, they're just looking at their phone. The whole society is looking at someone looking at their phone, but what they're experiencing in their brain is threatening situations. You might perceive it as just triggering situations, but your brain is experiencing this as a threatening situation. And how does your brain adapt to that? It gets ready for threatening situations. And we can see in functional MRIs that your amygdala is actually enlarged. People who experience chronic toxic stress have an enlarged amygdala. And actually their hippocampus is actually decreased in size, right? And there's actually a lot more. But man, this is bad. This is your brain adapting to numerous threatening situations in hopes to survive, right? Now, in a situation where there are credible threats, maybe it's good for you. But if you're just at work, if you're just at home arguing with your wife, this is bad. This is real bad. And the idea I like to use with the fight or flight system is kind of like the Secret Service, right? They're always on alert. They're always on alert for threats, for anything that could be threatening. They're looking at something suspicious, right? And we actually have information, some studies that show that the amygdala triggers even when there's something that's out of place, right? When there's something suspicious, it's already triggering a little bit. So just like the Secret Service, they see something out of place, they're suspicious. Now, when there's a credible threat, they completely take over. They completely take over the system, the whole show, right? The president, they control where he goes, what he's doing, right? And the president in this situation could be like your prefrontal cortex. It's like your critical thinking. The critical thinking doesn't get to choose what happens in a fight or flight emergency response, right? The amygdala, the fight or flight completely takes over instinctively to create a survival situation. Now, this is real bad because when you go into this mode, there is nothing you can do. There is no thinking, there is no breathing, there's no friends saying, hey, calm down. None of that works. if you're already in this level of triggeredness, right? So this is so bad in so many situations. And again, because the amygdala is enlarged, you are more alert for threatening situations. Your brain is actually more ready to be triggered. It leaves you at a higher state of vulnerability to stress and less resilient towards stress, right? And the sad part is there's nothing actually stressful. There's nothing actually threatening. It's people going into their phones, experiencing perceived threatening situations that's creating this physiological change that affects the behavior from your day-to-day life, right? Whether you're angry with customers, you're angry with your boss, or you fight with your wife, or the wives fight with their husbands in this state of pure anger, right? This is life-changing in some situations, and we can see this in some police. When they get triggered and they're in the fight or flight response, sometimes they go too strong, right? And we see this a lot in America, and this really is the fight or flight taking over, right? And we know some situations where husbands have known to actually go too far with abuse of their wife, and sometimes they can't even remember, because memory is not part of the essential services in the fight or flight. So that is not maintained. So the idea is that you can't stop this when it's already occurred, but what you can do is be more resilient towards stress, right? Understand the physiology. Do not support the enlargement of your amygdala by encountering many stressful situations throughout the day. We need to be really encountering more peace, more calmness, more resilience towards stress, right? So we also know that people who are chronic users of cannabinoids, and we have the functional MRI scans of their brains, their amygdala is actually smaller. They actually have decreased sizes of amygdala compared to the average person. So whether that's good or bad, I don't know. You can make that determination on your own. But the point is, really control your stress, because you might get into a situation where you don't have control anymore, and you just got to live with the consequences of whatever happens, right? All right, there's so much more to talk about in this video, but I can't go through all of it, so I encourage you to study. All right, guys, and until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, enjoy life.